goodbye.
Isn't goodbye до свидания?
Oksana here, all about lesson 5. 5 phrases that will take you a long way.
Welcome back to RussianPod101.com, the place to learn and love Russian. In this lesson, we're going to discuss and learn 5 really useful phrases that you probably won't see taught in places like books and classrooms.
Yes, in this lesson, we'll introduce you to 5 phrases that will help you every day. Russian that real Russians speak as they go about their day.
You'll find these words and phrases will set you apart from many other Russian learners. You'll not only know the phrases, but more importantly, where and when to use them.
The first word is счастливо, which is goodbye.
Isn't goodbye до свидания for formal situations and пока just more informal?
You're right.
Okay, so if we have the formal and informal, what else is there?
Well, до свидания might sometimes sound a bit too formal and пока a bit too informal. I mean, if you visit Russia, you're probably not going to know anyone well enough to use пока.
That's true.
And до свидания maybe too much. For instance, in a restaurant, maybe once you've become acquainted with the person who has been serving you throughout your meal, you're not gonna want to say goodbye too formally right at the end, or maybe you just want to change.
Where does the word come from?
It comes from the word happy, счастливый, and literally means a wish of happiness to the person you're saying goodbye to.
That's nice.
Yes, it is actually. You usually use it with people you know, rather than strangers, but as you see, one can quickly become acquainted with a stranger.
So it sounds more polite than пока, but not totally formal. Yes, it's perfect, really.
Yes, I mean, if you address someone as вы rather than ты, you wouldn't normally say пока, but you can say счастливо. Счастливо.
Is there anything particular to note about the pronunciation?
Good question. The first sound in счастливо is pronounced like the sound sh and not sch.
I see. Okay, so what's the next phrase?
Вы не подскажете? Could you tell me?
Don't you usually learn to say извините quite early on as a student?
Yes, very often. And of course, there is nothing wrong with using it if you ask for directions or something like that.
Is there a but coming up here?
Not at all. It's just that using вы не подскажете will certainly make you sound more natural and polite at the same time. It can be used with извините.
Can you give us a real-world example?
Извините, вы не подскажете, где улица Маяковского? Excuse me, could you tell me where Mayakovsky Street is?
Oh, I see. That's fabulous. We all need directions from time to time.
Another example is Извините, вы не подскажете, когда следующий автобус? Excuse me, could you please tell me when the next bus is?
That sounds like me, missing the bus all the time.
I've got a special Russian tip for missing buses. Works all over the world, though it's a closely guarded secret.
You do? Great. Can you divulge this information?
Yes, leave earlier, Eddie.
I should have seen that one coming.
Which brings us nicely to ничего страшного, which is no worries or no problem.
I don't think I've ever heard of that.
I'm not surprised, actually. This is very rarely taught to beginners, despite it being extremely useful. We all know how often you say no problem in English.
Isn't no problem translated as нет проблем?
You're right, although it isn't usually used in the same context as it is in English.
And that's the underlying message throughout this lesson, really. Especially when it comes to spoken everyday language, many things just can't be translated literally word for word. And that goes for any language.
Ничего страшного literally means nothing scary and can be used in a variety of situations to accept an apology or reassure someone.
So let's look at another real-world example. If someone pushes you in the metro and then apologizes.
You can reply, ничего страшного.
Or a friend calls you and says he can't meet today. Ничего страшного.
And another example is, if a child failed an exam, you'd say, ничего страшного, сдашь в следующий раз.
Which means, no worries, you'll pass next time.
Exactly.
Great. What's next?
What would you say if I sneezed?
Do you need a tissue?
Okay, what else?
Do you have a cold?
Oh my goodness. You'd say, bless you. Будьте здоровы.
Oh, I see. Yes, bless you.
When someone sneezes, some Russian people might consider it impolite if you don't say anything, so "будьте здоровы" is a good phrase to know.
And you'll certainly impress your Russian friends if you use this phrase in front of them.
Especially if you get the gender right.
Gender? Not again. Even for something like bless you after sneezing.
Absolutely. To use this phrase correctly, you need to keep in mind if you address the person who sneezed formally or informally. If you address them formally using вы, you should say "будьте здоровы."
What about if you're addressing them informally using ты?
You should say "будь здоров" if you're speaking to a man and "будь здорова" if you're speaking to a woman.
I see. So that's for what's the last?
Хорошо, which is good, okay, or well.
And this is probably the most common word in spoken Russian, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. Native speakers use it all the time, which makes it difficult for learners to grasp its exact meaning.
Yes, I've heard it many times. Does its use depend on context?
Well, even though хорошо comes from хороший, which means good, we would normally translate it as okay or fine rather than great. If your teacher says хорошо after you finish an exercise, don't get too excited.
So it doesn't mean you did well.
In that setting, it usually means, okay, we can move on now, rather than praise you. However, очень хорошо, very good, is usually a compliment.
I'll look out for that one then.
Indeed.
This has been great. Let's have a quick recap. The first word we mentioned was счастливо, which is a neutral way to say goodbye.
Then we discovered «Вы не подскажете», which means «Could you tell me?»
The third phrase was ничего страшного, which you use when someone apologizes to you.
Then came «Будьте здоровы», to be said after you sneeze.
And lastly, хорошо, which simply means okay.
Great! As we've learned, those are common phrases that are used in English and indeed any language. It's what keeps the language oiled and is focused on what people say to each other every day, rather than some dry academic writing that nobody actually speaks.
This really summarizes learning with Russian Pod 101. We know that any language needs to be learned correctly, but we also know that languages are alive and spoken by everyday people in everyday situations. And this is just as important to learn. Okay, that just about does it for today. Before we go, we want to tell you about a way to drastically improve your pronunciation.
The voice recording tool.
Yes, the voice recording tool in the Premium Learning Center.
Record your voice with a click of a button.
And then play it back just as easily.
So you record your voice and then listen to it.
Compare it to the native speakers.
And adjust your pronunciation.
This will help you to improve your pronunciation fast. Okay, thanks for listening. Goodbye.
Счастливо! Привет всем!
Eddie here. All about Lesson 6, 5 words your teacher will never teach you. Hello and welcome back to RussianPod101.com, the fastest, easiest and most fun way to learn Russian. I'm joined in the studio by...
Hello everyone, Oksana here.
I'm really excited about this lesson.
Me too. We're going to cover real Russian. Russian that is spoken every day by native speakers and makes it the wonderful country that it is.
Yes, we're going to cover swear words.
Eddie, we're not going to do any such thing.
Okay, sorry. What we're really going to cover today is 5 words which are informal. They aren't considered rude, though you should really only use them with people you know quite well.
Yes, this is something you aren't going to be taught or find in any textbook, even though it's arguably just as important.
Quite. You don't want to be amongst friends and be speaking like a talking dictionary. So, is this like slang, Oksana?
Actually, that's a really good question. Russian slang is called mat.
So, that's obviously informal, is it?
Well, it's obviously informal, but not in that sense. Mat is considered extremely offensive, even among young people, and it isn't even something that people would want to see in print.
I understand. So here we're not going to cover that, but we're going to cover informal phrases that are just fine to use in the company of people you know well. Okay, so before we start, let's begin with a tip when it comes to how to sound informal. We've covered in previous lessons that the order of words in a sentence in Russian is more flexible than it is in English.
Indeed it is. What is less known is that the more unusual you make the order of words, the less formal you sound.
So, to sound informal in Russian, you can just use unusual word order?
That's exactly it. For example, to ask, what's your name? You would normally say, как тебя зовут? However, saying, тебя как зовут? sounds less rigid and therefore informal.
I see, so you're putting the object in front of the sentence, it seems.
Absolutely, that will often do the trick.
So you can say яблоки купил for have you bought the apples instead of saying ты купил яблоки.
Yes, and when it comes to questions, you can put the question word after the subject to make it sound less formal, like «Он где работает?» Where does he work? Rather than «Где он работает?»
Excellent. Okay, let's start with the first word.
Жрать, which is an informal way of saying to eat.
Like to wolf down, to gorge, to stuff one's face.
It seems that you're very familiar with this term, Eddie.
I'm not sure if that's a compliment.
I always compliment you. So, what other Russian words also mean to eat?
The words есть and кушать both mean to eat.
Кушать might sound more formal than есть to some people. Also, you can't say кушать about yourself. Жрать also means to eat, but this word conveys the idea of eating too quickly, too much, or eating unsuitable things.
Eating unsuitable things. Sounds scary.
For example, он жрет все, что находит. He wolves down everything he finds.
And хватит жрать. Stop stuffing yourself.
As you can see, these terms can be used in a jovial way with people you know well. Just bear in mind that some people might not like it if you speak like this in their presence.
Very true. You may know your friend well, but not your friend's friend. Okay, what's the next word?
Тю-тю, meaning gone or lost.
This funny-sounding word, which is very easy to remember and use, will certainly impress your Russian friends. Actually, it isn't a verb, but it can be translated into English as gone or lost. You just put it directly around the thing that is supposed to be lost.
Couple of examples are он вернулся, а кошелёк тю-тю, meaning he came back, but the wallet was already gone. And, for example, все его денежки тю-тю, which translates to he lost all his money.
He should have put it in the bank.
Though if he had, we wouldn't have learned that phrase.
You've always got an answer for all my jokes.
Oh, they were jokes? I'm sorry, I had no idea. I thought that...
Okay, moving on swiftly. Однокашник is the next word, and this means a classmate or a schoolmate.
This word is the informal version of одноклассник. This comes from the words один and класс, or same class.
The word однокашник also comes from один, but contains the word kasha, which means porridge.
In Old Russian, kasha used to mean the meal that is eaten with others, so однокашник was a person who shared meals with. However, now it's just an informal word for classmate.
Wow, that's from a meal to classmate. Quite a transformation. How would you use it in a sentence or phrase?
You may say, это Славка, мой однокашник, which means this is Slavka, my classmate.
That's a great word, and I love its history from Old Russian. Pretty cool.
It really is.
And the fourth word we have is тормозить, which means to react too slowly.
Yes, тормозить usually means to brake. For example, машина тормозит means the car is braking.
But when it's used informally or as a joke, it's all about reacting slowly, right?
Yes, exactly that. It's used to tell someone that they're reacting or acting too slowly.
So, for example, you could say отвечай, не тормози. Wake up and answer me.
I expect you hear that quite often.
Are you suggesting I'm a sleepyhead?
I'm not suggesting anything.
The other example is я сегодня торможу, потому очень устал, which means I'm slow today because I'm very tired.
That's a really good example, actually. Very popular.
Okay, the fifth and last word that your teacher will never teach you is прикаливаться.
And this means to joke or to play. You may know the word шутить, to joke. Прикалываться is its informal version and is much more commonly used, especially among young people. For example, я просто прикалываюсь, meaning I'm just playing.
Another example is хватит прикаливаться, скажи серьезно, which means stop joking, speak seriously.
The adjective прикольный has the same root as прикалываться and means funny or cool. For example, прикольный чувак, meaning a cool dude.
I know that phrase well because I hear it all the time.
Really, Eddie?
Absolutely.
Are you sure you're not getting it confused with хватит прикалываться, скажи серьезно?
Nice recap. Okay, on that note, that covers our 5 phrases that you'll be very unlikely to see in any Russian language textbook.
Informal Russian is just as important as knowing the formal way of expressing, as well as knowing when to use each.
That's why there really is no better place to learn Russian than from RussianPod101.com. That just about does it for today. Before we go, we want to tell you about a way to drastically improve your pronunciation.
The voice recording tool.
Yep, the voice recording tool in the Premium Learning Center.
Record your voice with a click of a button.
And then play it back just as easily.
So you record your voice and then listen to it.
Compare it to the native speakers.
And adjust your pronunciation.
This will help you improve your pronunciation fast. Bye, see you soon.
Пока-пока.